Just a second. Okay. Okay. So, okay. So we are live on Facebook. Welcome everyone. Good afternoon to everyone in Singapore. So today the topic, as you know, is the nursing registration pathway in Australia and New Zealand. Okay, so today we have members from IHM with us who will be talking about this topic. And before we start, we have St. George here, who is one of our alumni. So he just has a very tight schedule today, so he will not be able to stay with us for the entire duration of this webinar. Hence, we would like to invite him first to talk about his experience with IHM and also talk about his background, how a GNM nurse, as a GNM nurse, he did GDN, he studied with us, and how he managed to get registered in New Zealand. So Sen, I invite you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to please talk about your experience. Thank you then.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come into your IHM's platform and to share my pathway of achieving my goal as a registered nurse. Basically, I completed my diploma nursing from India, and with my diploma nursing, I would only be able to be a enrolled nurse or a Division 2 nurse in Australia, New Zealand, respectively. This GDN program, the Graduate Diploma in Nursing from IHM, which I successfully completed last year, given me the opportunity to apply both New Zealand Nursing Council and APRA to obtain my RN registration pathway. This is basically a simple step, and we go one further step from the diploma nursing, because with the acquired qualification, one way we update ourselves, our level of nursing qualification, also we advance our career. And also it's very straightforward to get the registration if once you complete the English requirement for both the countries. It is very straightforward, and I think every diploma nurse who plans to chase their dream to get registered in Australia or New Zealand should try this pathway. And I would strongly recommend everyone to take that courage or initiative to achieve their dream goals. And obviously New Zealand, it's a beautiful country, and one of the best place to practice, especially this COVID time. We are one of the safest place so far, and I take and thank IHNA for giving the opportunity, and especially Gions, who initially a couple of years ago, when I wanted to enroll for this program, I put thousands of questions in front of Gions, and he was very happy to answer all of those. And any clients going through this course, welcome to talk to Gions. He has good knowledge on this one, and he got the ability to explain it thoroughly, and I think his explanation were fair enough for me. And it's very straightforward. Complete the GDN, complete the English language requirement, apply either APRA or New Zealand Nursing Council. Very straightforward. You would be guided to your registration pathway. That's all for me, and I think the people who are watching me right now, and those who are going to share, I hope it's going to help the diploma nurses all from India.
Yes, thank you, Sen, so much. To reiterate, talk about it. So he was a GNM nurse. Initially, he was not eligible to apply for registration in either New Zealand or Australia. However, after completing GDN program, and getting his English requirement as well, So he was able to get his nursing registration, right? Thank you. Thank you, Sen. And one more question, since you studied this course online, so can you tell us how easy or difficult it was, just your experience about this online mode of learning?
Um, it's quite easy, straightforward. These days, everyone is pretty much onto online learning, and IHN got the best webinars. So the faculty is very supportive. Just to follow the guidelines given from the tutors, and welcome to ask questions, attend the classes, go through the topics, um, and do the research and complete the program. It's very straightforward. Nothing difficult, nothing unachievable. It's all possible. It's just a matter of giving time, be patient, and putting your effort. And within 1 year, everything will come on paper, and you will be a GDN. So, which give advanced in your career, because being GDN, you would have career advance even in the nursing field. So uh, I think we are one step down from applying for masters. So I think it's one of the best thing to apply and complete this program.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Sen. We will not take much of your time. We really appreciate you coming here, although you were really, really busy. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for the wonderful testimony.
Okay. Thank you for now. I'm leaving. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes. So to all the other attendees, sorry for starting this so abruptly. It's because Sen could only be with us for the first 10 minutes. That's why we had to rush that. So again, welcome to everyone watching us via Facebook Live and all those who have attended this Zoom webinar. Welcome. So I would like to mention that if you have any questions or queries, we have a Q&A section. You can put your questions there and we will address those questions at the end of the webinar. And those who are watching us live on Facebook, you can do the same. You can please post your questions there in the comment section, and we will try our best to address all the questions at the end of the session. So first up, we have Simon with us, who will be starting the presentation. So Simon, I request you to kindly introduce yourself, and if you could.
Oh, no problem. All right, so welcome everybody, and welcome on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you first of all for taking the time on a Sunday. I know these are crazy times. These are very, very crazy times, and where Gions and Dr. Lena and myself are all based in Melbourne. We're in level 4 lockdown at the moment, which means we can essentially move to our front door and go no further. So it's very, very difficult times. What I would like to say, first of all, and I'm sure all of the IHM people would agree as well, is to thank you all, to all the nurses online, for your efforts in battling this COVID pandemic, and thank you for your thankless efforts and time and professionalism that you bring to caring for patients all over Singapore as well. So just our thanks to you before we get started. So today we're going to talk about nursing registration. We're going to talk about how to help you achieve your dreams with nursing registration in Australia and/or New Zealand. We're going to talk about how education can help you then achieve those dreams as well. Now, I understand from Gions we have a large number of our participants are GNM nurses, so those nurses who have done their 3-year diploma in India. And then I've also seen a few in the chat room around bachelor and masters as well. So we'll address all of those questions. Our aim today is to be able to answer all of these questions for you, because it's quite often you've got lots of questions and it's difficult to get answers. So that's our job, is to try and help you understand what's going on, understand how this pathway is then, how you're able to realize your dream to be a registered nurse in Australia as well. Okay, so first of all, let me kick off. We're going to go through a number of slides. You're going to hear from me. you're going to hear from Dr. Lena, who is our Director of Studies for Institute of Health and Management as well, and has more experience in her one hand than I do in my entire body. So, so she will talk to you. She will talk to you about nursing and about her experiences with nursing in Australia. And then we will answer questions, and we will answer 1 or 100 questions. All right. So first of all, let me tell you who we are. So the Institute of Health and Management, and we may have spoken to some of you in Singapore about 12 months ago. Gions and I were in Singapore, I think about 12 months ago, when we were able to leave Australia. So the Institute of Health and Management is the higher education division of Health Careers International. So the logo you can see there in the middle with Health Careers in the circle. Health Careers is the overarching company. Institute of Health and Management is our higher education provider. And what that means is we are a higher education provider, which means that we run alongside every university in Australia. So the same regulator for universities is the same regulator for IHM as well. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because we think it's really, really important that you can deal and talk to the college. And you can get to know Dr. Lena, and you can get to know Gions, and you can get to know me, so that you're dealing with, you know who you're dealing with. We'll see you on campus. We'll see you online. So we want to make sure that you understand who everybody is as well. Could you hit the next slide, Bodhi?
Sure, Simon.
Click away. There you go. So we have, in Australia, we have 3 campuses in Perth, Sydney, and Melbourne. We also have offices in India, and we have a very big, sizable team in India as well. We have offices in Dubai, the Philippines, Nepal, and Colombia as well. Okay, so you can pretty much find us in most of the important places where nurses are working. You can find us in places where nurses are able to then access us for information, etc. Okay, our campuses in Perth, Melbourne, and Sydney. All of our programs are available online and on campus as well. Okay, and we'll talk to you a little bit later on about the next step after you've studied your GCN or GDN and become eligible for nursing registration, then about continuing on to masters and the benefits of doing that as well. Okay, thanks, Bodhi. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about nursing registration in New Zealand and Australia, and this is what we're here for. So let's start with Australia. And that'll be the next slide. Okay, so as you're probably aware, nursing registration in Australia is changing. So in beginning of this year, in March, just before COVID really hit Australia, and I think it had already started to make itself well known in Singapore by that stage, the Nursing Registration Board started to transition to a new form of registration, which is outcomes-based assessment, or OBA. Okay, so this is a little bit different to what you might previously have known as the IRON program or the EPIQ program. It's a 12-week course on campus, 6 weeks on campus, 6 weeks working clinical placements in hospitals in Australia. Okay, so that was the old, and we still run that course, and that will run probably until July or September 2021. But in the meantime, AHPRA, the Nursing Registration Board, is now transitioning over to OBA, or outcomes-based assessment. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what an outcomes-based assessment is, and then we'll talk about the registration process. Thanks, Bodhi. Okay, so outcomes-based assessment is essentially 2 components, 2 parts. The first part is a computer-based assessment. Okay, and that is that comprises of NCLEX. So those of you who have looked at working in UK or Singapore, UK, Canada, the US, you've probably heard of NCLEX. Okay, and that is an online assessment of, basically an online assessment of your understanding of nursing practice. Okay, but first step you need to go through with AHPRA is, and this is all done online at the moment. Okay, is that you need to, first of all, online through AHPRA, do what they call a self-assessment, which simply is to tell AHPRA about your academic qualification, your English language skill, and confirm that you have a current nursing registration. Okay. Now, for all of our G&Ms who are online at the moment, unfortunately, you're not eligible at the moment to register in Australia or New Zealand. The minimum level of qualification that you require is a level 7 qualification, which is the equivalent of a bachelor. And that's why we're going to talk to you today about graduate certificate GCN or a graduate diploma GDN. Okay, and they're both level 8 qualifications. So that means you're able to jump over, combine your nursing registration and your working experience to jump over a bachelor and to then move on to a level 8 qualification, which is the first half of a 2-year master's program. Now, there's a lot of information in there. The key piece you need to remember at the moment is that as a G&M with a 3-year diploma, you don't meet the academic requirements for registration in Australia and New Zealand. And so you need to do a higher qualification. You either need to do a bachelor, which is 3 more years, or you can then go on to a graduate certificate, graduate diploma, which is 6 months or 1 more year. I know which one I'd do. I'd probably do 6 months or 12 months extra. Okay, so that's the first component. When AHPRA looks at your application, they're looking at 3 things: your academic qualification, your language qualification level, and that needs to be IELTS 7 or OETB or PTE 65 in Australia. Okay, they also want to see your current registration. Okay, not your registration from 6 years ago. They want to see your current registration and that you have worked in Australia more than 3 months in the last 5 years. Okay, so that's step number 1. Let's move on to step number 2, Body. So step number 2 is where AHPRA then assesses and they go through your documents, all the documents you provide. And it's always a good idea to provide more documents than less. Okay, so if you have a reference from your employer, provide that document. If you have been working in ICU, or if you have been working in other areas, provide that document. Okay, don't just think, oh, I'll just provide 3 documents and that's all. The more documents you can provide, the better off you are as well. And AHPRA will then assess those against the standards for nursing registration in Australia. So that's step number 2. You upload, AHPRA then assesses. Now let's move on to step number 3. Step number 3 is what's called a decision letter, a DL. It's world famous now. Everybody wants a DL. And essentially a decision letter is where AHPRA either writes to you and says, we would like to offer you, we'd like you to become registered in Australia, but you will need to do you will need to complete the OBA or the outcomes-based assessment. Or they'll write to you and say, unfortunately, you don't meet the academic requirements, the language requirements, or your registration, etc. Your registration overall, you do not meet the requirements for registration in Australia. Let me just be clear. All nurses applying to Australia for registration now must complete OBA, outcomes-based assessment. Okay. And as I said, we'll talk about that in a moment, but part 1 is a computer-based test, which is NCLEX. Okay. Let's move on to step number 4, Body. And here it is. So first, step number 4, by now you will have completed your online NCLEX test, and you will have done that at a Pearson Testing Centre in Singapore. Okay. You simply go online, book your time, and then you do your test. Once you pass that test, you'll be invited to book a time in Australia to come to Australia to do the outcomes-based assessment. Okay. And that's a 1-day assessment in Adelaide, so in South Australia, okay, at Adelaide University or University of South Australia. So 1 day only. So you come to Australia for a week, do 1-day test, 5 days holiday, and everyone's happy. Okay. The test on that day, you will do 2 things. You will do 4 simulations. So in other words, you'll be given a scenario and you'll be asked and assessed on how you respond to that scenario. And the key question is, how would you provide nursing care in that scenario? Okay. And an AHPRA, it'll be two people in the room, an AHPRA assessor and you as the nurse. Once you've done 4 of those simulations, then you'll do two or three clinical tests, just to test your skill, to basically measure your skill in performing some clinical tasks. At the end of that one day, if you've passed, AHPRA will then recommend you for registration and they will finalize their process. If you have not passed, then you may have failed one simulation. You'll then be asked to come back to complete that simulation at a later date. Okay. So it's what they call high consequence, which means if you fail all 4 simulations, you will have to go away and come back at a later date. Okay. So preparation for OBA is absolutely essential. It's very difficult, and I think Dr. Lena would agree, it's very difficult to pass OBA with having done no preparation, just walking up and thinking I can give it a go. Australia and Singapore are very different in the nursing standards. They're similar, but they're different. India and Australia, different standards. Dubai and Australia, different processes, different practices, different standards as well. Okay. But once you pass OBA, on to registration, and then you're a registered nurse in Australia. But now we're going to talk to you about other pathways, about how else you can become a registered nurse in Australia. And this is a pathway via New Zealand, via the New Zealand Nursing Council, that has been available and still remains available. Some people have known about it, others haven't known about it. And I think, as Sen said earlier, we've done a lot of work over the past 12 months or 18 months, led by Gions, who is very persistent in getting the New Zealand Nursing Council and all the other associated bodies to recognise a nurse with a graduate certificate or graduate diploma as being meeting the academic requirements to be registered in New Zealand. Okay. So let's talk about New Zealand for a moment. The New Zealand Nursing Council, or the Nursing Council of New Zealand, they have a multiple step process as well. And as you can see on the slide in front of you, okay, again, if you are a 3-year diploma holder, you are not eligible for registration with just your 3-year diploma. You must do a higher qualification. And again, that's where graduate certificate or graduate diploma comes into play, because it means you can jump over your bachelor and go straight on to a level 8 qualification. Okay. And that's really important, because what we recognize is your experience as a registered nurse, your current registration, and your skills. And so that helps you to then meet the eligibility requirements. Let's move on to the next slide, Bonnie. Now, much like Australia, the Nursing Council in New Zealand will assess 3 key, let me get 3 fingers up, 3 key things. The first thing is your academic qualification. If you're a GNM, they will not register you. You must have a GC, a bachelor or a postgraduate qualification. They'll recognise your language, which again is 7. That's IELTS 7. New Zealand's a little different. They don't recognise PTE. So it's either IELTS or OET only, okay? So just let me repeat that, they do not recognise PTE for registration as a nurse in New Zealand, okay? And they'll also want to see your nursing registration, current registration, etc. Okay? Thanks, Bodhi.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Next slide.
Okay.
That'd be great. I'll give you a little thumbs up. How's that?
Yes, that'd be better.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So much like Australia, when you apply, the council will assess your application against those 3 things we talked about, and then they will issue you again a decision letter. Okay. And that will either be to refuse, say your application, you're not eligible because you do not meet the requirements in one of those 3 areas, or it'll be to refer you to what's called the CAP program, which is a competency assessment program for overseas registered nurses. And New Zealand uses CAP. Australia has previously used IHM or EPIQ, and now Australia is moving on to outcomes-based assessment, the one-day test. Okay, so very similar systems. Okay, Australia and New Zealand are very similar. We approach things in a very similar way as far as registration and practice, etc. Okay, so you apply and a decision letter is then issued. Next slide, Body. So step number 4, the CAP program. You can opt to do the CAP program in New Zealand. Okay, and the CAP program is a program that, you know, as I said, much like IHM, that you complete in New Zealand, and then you go on to registration. So if you were to come to Australia, you would do the OBA program. If you were to go to New Zealand, you would do the CAP program. Okay, and but that is after you have done, if you're a GNM, that is after you have completed your GCN or GDN online course for 6 months or 12 months. Okay, because we need to get your education level, your qualification needs to be at a level 7 or above. And that's where a GCN and GDN is level 8, the first year of a 2-year master's program. Okay, and well, I'm sure there'll be 100 questions, so we'll answer those a little bit later on. Next slide, Body. Okay, now let's talk about direct registration, and this is really the what I'll call, this is the beautiful pathway for nurses in Singapore, and that's really why we're talking to you. You heard from Sen a little earlier as well. This information in front of you, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, has been taken from the Nursing Council of New Zealand website. So please feel free to visit the Nursing Council of New Zealand, simply put international registered nurses into their search tool, and that'll bring you to this area. So this is the pathway that is going to open up your opportunity to work as a registered nurse in Australia. So let me just read that to you. If you hold current registration in the UK, Ireland, Australia, or Singapore, which is where you all are now, the United States or Canada, you may not need to complete CAP. And remember, CAP is the course you must do in New Zealand, we talked about, because the registered nurse role and healthcare in these countries are very similar. Now that's good news, okay? That's really good news because, as I said, Australia, Singapore, UK, Ireland, Canada, US, similar in their nursing practice, their nursing standards, slightly different in how each country does things, but there's a general acceptance between all of those countries and the nursing boards that there is a general comparison between all of those countries. So the New Zealand Nursing Council, once they take a look at your qualification and your registration, will then advise you whether you need to complete the assessment or not. So, and that assessment is CAP. Okay. So this is the opportunity we have for you. Okay. To avoid doing CAP, we think if you complete graduate diploma or graduate certificate, but probably graduate diploma, you will then be able to more than meet the academic requirements. Your experience in Singapore will be valuable. Your language qualification will obviously show, because you're working in Singapore, largely in English-speaking hospitals. And that will then equip you very, very well to meet all of the requirements of the New Zealand Nursing Council. You're all registered in Singapore because you have to be in order to work. Okay. Thanks, Body. Now, how to transfer your New Zealand nursing registration to Australian registration. Thanks, Body. There we go. And this is done via what's called the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Act. And of course, there's an acronym for this, okay? And the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Act, as I said earlier, is essentially recognises that the nursing practice in New Zealand is very similar or the same as the nursing practice in Australia, okay? So what the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Act allows is for recognition of registration as a nurse in Australia in New Zealand, or registration of a nurse in New Zealand in Australia, okay? Sen, who you heard from earlier, his registration took 7 days. Once he was registered in New Zealand, he was then able to finalize his registration in Australia in 7 days. So there's just recognition of registration in New Zealand in Australia, okay? And again, it's because, as we said earlier, there's a recognition, and this is an act of both parliaments. So this is the law. And this goes across a number of different professions, not just healthcare. Doctors, dentists, medicos, etc., all have mutual recognition. Okay. There's 3 areas of practice, and that's enrolled nurses, registered nurses, and the nurse practitioner. You know, the highest level of nursing level as well. But obviously, for you guys to be able to take your 3-year G&M diploma, upgrade your qualification to level 8, secure your registration in New Zealand, and then simply transfer that registration across to Australia. Now, what I will say is that this is not a new pathway. I know doctors and specialists, etc., have been using New Zealand, have been working in New Zealand and then transferring to Australia for many, many, many years. Okay, so both governments understand the benefits, and that's why the Recognition Act exists as well. Okay, so that means you will have dual registration, New Zealand and Australia. Okay, take that anywhere in the world, and you will be in any of those countries, UK, Canada, US, etc., and you'll be in very, very, very good position to then move your registration elsewhere in the world. Okay, if for some reason you didn't want to stay in Australia, which I highly doubt. Okay, thanks, Bodhi. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Dr. Lena, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about opportunities for international nurses in Australia. As I said earlier, these are very, very crazy times. COVID-19, and as you know, in Singapore, you're sort of coming out the other end of your second wave. Australia is starting to experience its second wave. It's changed a lot, and I think Dr. Lena will talk about that a little bit now. Dr. Lena is our Director of Studies for the Institute of Health and Management. So Dr. Lena, make sure that what you are learning is what you need to be learning in the best possible way. So I'll hand over to Dr. Lena.
Thank you, Simon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to talk to you about nursing in Australia and nursing, actually your opportunities in nursing, not only in Australia and New Zealand, but that's your interest area, but all over the world. Now, to talk about nursing in Australia, I want to say that we have grown in numbers quite enormously, and we have increased from 200,700 to 200,079 nurses into around 331,000 within a year, and we are expecting to increase more. And why is that? In the current situation in the world with increased infectious diseases, problems of chronicity, aging populations, all demand nurses to work. And while the population is aging, the nursing population is also currently aging, and thus we need new nurses to come in. And we are likely to have 100,047 jobs in the next 5 years in Australia. Bodhi, if you want to show me. So why the demand? As we said, what is happening in the world is causing everybody to want to do nursing. And as diploma nurses, you would also have noticed how nursing as a profession has increased in the eyes of the people. It has always been a profession that has been known for its trustworthiness. People trust nurses as #1 profession in the world most. And yet the public image about nurses was not so great in many countries. And I'm certain that always people think or thought that nursing is a lowly career. You're there to serve the people. They did not look at you as a profession. But actually, this year, with what nurses have been doing with COVID-19 patients and with the hard work they're doing, we are noticing that there is a high demand for youngsters to become nurses. So everybody wants to become a nurse. And we have always said nursing is the international visa worldwide. When you're a nurse, everybody wants you. There is not one single country that will not have you. And this is a bonus. And now, with the public image looking at nurses in a different way and raising the profile of nursing, I think that there is a high demand. Now, you might ask, okay, why should I come to Australia? Or you might be wondering, what will you be paid if you come to Australia? Now, I want to talk about this because it is important. People like their career, like to advance in their career, and they also like to know what is the remuneration if I come into this career? Will I be losing? Will they pay me more? Will they pay me less than what I'm paid in my own country? Will it be enough for me to live? And these are important questions. So as a starting salary, and registered nurse in Australia starts with around $65,000 Australian. But this will increase with where the, not only with seniority, of course it does with seniority, but it varies also on the location. Where are you working? Is it in the city? Is it in rural areas? And of course, with your qualification. Now, in Australia, I'm saying the basic starting salary is 65,000 for a nurse, but it increases as the number of years of experience you have increase. But also, when you get a graduate certificate in nursing, your salary goes up by 4%. When you get a graduate diploma in nursing in Australia, your salary goes up by 70%. And when you get your master's degree, your salary goes up by 8%. So having higher degrees in nursing is very important because it increases your salary. Now, if you attend further education and you get your master's, you can become either a clinical nurse specialist or a nurse practitioner. A nurse practitioner salary starts at 115,000 and it can go up to 130,000. A clinical nurse specialist salary starts around 88,000 and it can go up to 100,000. And of course, with seniority, you can become a director of nursing, and then that salary range is very different. It's different on the size of the hospital or the nursing home or the clinical setup where you are working. And a director of nursing salary usually ranges between $168,000 to $220,000. So these are things that come with experience, of course, with studying further than your diploma, getting into a grad cert. Some people get into a grad directly, which is a first year of master's, and then they might take a year or two break. They can work for a year or two, save some money, come back and finish their master's by undertaking one extra year of study. There are some universities that have accelerated programs, and their master's program ranges from 1.5 years to 2 years. And students or prospective nurses who want higher degrees can choose any university they want to get into, depending on the length of the program and the specialty they want to specialize in. Now, you might be wondering, what are the demands in nursing as a career in Australia? And I want to say that there are three kind of nursing career specialization demands. One is the demand for qualified nurses in aged care. This is very much in high demand. The second area is in mental health. And of course, people get their masters in mental health nursing. And the third most career in demand is critical care, emergency care nursing. And these are of course, in nursing, we have many, many other specializations, but I'm talking at currently what is the highest demand for nurses in what areas. Now, of course, there's cardiovascular nurses, oncology nurses, peri-op nurses, palliative care nurses, pediatric nurses, midwives. I mean, all these areas are in high demand. And actually, most specialized area nurses are in high demand these days due to also the advances in technology, and nurses have to be up to date with the advances of technology. They have to be up to date in their knowledge. And of course, all nurse programs now rely on nurses studying research and doing and even in practicing in evidence-based practice. And I'm sure you would have heard of this word because it has been the buzzword for the last 20 years. And anything we do in nursing, we have to show that we are doing it based on evidence. Where does the evidence come from? It comes from research. Where do nurses research? First, in their bachelor's or diploma degrees, they might be consumers of research, but once they get into the master's program, then we expect nurses to come up with research ideas, innovative ideas, and then moving into their PhDs and of course, adding knowledge to the body of nursing. So I don't know if I need to tell you more about what we can do, but Simon told you how you can get here, how you can become registered, and I can tell you what are the demands, how you can further your education, how you can increase your salaries, and with increased salaries, of course, comes increased lifestyles, and of course, you have to have the passion. Without the passion, you cannot do anything in life. And of course, if you are nurses, I am certain that you have the passion for nursing, the empathy for people, and the right traits and qualifications to become a nurse. So I am happy to answer questions if people have questions, but I don't know if Gions is going to add something or Bodhi to this.
So Dr. Lena, I might just add one thing onto what you were just saying about the specializations as well, in that if you're quite often what we see and what Dr. Lena and I see around the world is that G&M nurses are working in they're working in accident emergency, they're working in renal, they're working in NICU, but they have no qualifications. So you are taught the skills, but you have no qualification to recognize those skills. When you register for nursing, when you register in Australia or New Zealand, the first thing the nursing board will ask is, if you say, I am an ICU specialist, they will ask you for your qualification as an ICU specialist. They won't recognize if you have been working in ICU for 10 years because your hospital has asked you to do that. They won't recognize that. You must have the qualification to recognize the skills that you have. And that's really important because we have and Gions and Bodhi and all of us talk to a number of nurses every single week, and a large number of nurses, particularly from India, G&M nurses who work in the Middle East, Singapore, other countries, all say, I've been working in renal for 5 years, so I'm a renal specialist, which is great. And the employers are interested in that. But the Nursing Registration Board won't recognize that experience. They will simply look at your base qualification. If you have a diploma, that's what they will look at as well. So that's a really important thing, because what Dr. Lena said is absolutely correct. The demand for specialist nurses is where the greatest demand is in the future. Nursing is becoming more of a specialist, high technology profession. It's also, and just to build on what Dr. Lena was saying, I think there was a survey done in 2018, and there was a simple question asked of all Australians, and I think there was about 1 million people responded. Where would you rank as the most trusted profession? Now, you could imagine bank managers were fairly well down the list. Real estate agents were pretty well down the list. Lawyers were in the middle, but down the bottom. The number one most trusted profession in Australia was nursing. And that was by a long, long, long way as well. Okay. So Australia treats and regards nurses as a very valuable and a highly respected profession. And I think that's really important for you to think about when you're looking at seeking registration and getting a pathway to Australia, is that as a nurse, you will say to somebody, I'm a nurse, and they will be interested in what you do. They won't simply look at you and go, okay, that's fine. You're the equivalent of a coffee maker. You will be a highly respected professional. And I think that's really important, because I hear some really sad stories of employers not respecting the nurses as well. But just remember, all of your experience needs to have a qualification in order to be recognized in Australia and New Zealand. What's the next slide, Bodhi?
Next, we have the video. So we have come to the end of our presentation. So thank you so much, Simon, and thank you so much, Dr. Lena. Now we are open for questions. So while you're typing your questions, we would just like to show a very short video about a student of ours, how after she was a GNM nurse and how she was initially not qualified to apply for registration. However, after completing GCN and GDN with us, she gained her eligibility and hence acquired her registration. So while you all type your questions, we will quickly show that video to you.
Can you raise the voice?
Volume, Bodhi.
Okay, sorry. Give me a second.
Until stories that said that the new law and regulation prohibited renewing registration for GNM nurses did the rounds. For me, job security is a very important thing, and this news put me on a panic mode. And I just decided to go back to India. It was my lifelong ambition to settle abroad and lead a fulfilling life and provide better opportunities for my children. So I tried to gather all the information to find the best option for us. I knew registered nursing in Australia is the second highest paid nurses in the world. And I've heard life in Australia is great with a beautiful work-life balance. I did a lot of research, but it was going around in circles. Sometimes people just take you for a ride and promise things that lifts your dream and hope, and it's worse to fall from there. Sometimes I felt maybe we're not destined for it, and it's better to give up. But when I looked into my baby's eyes, I felt a strange sense of courage and responsibility to keep trying. After many futile attempts to gather the right information, a friend of a common friend suggested contacting IHM. And from there, it was all a breeze. I don't mean to say it was a cakewalk. I still had to study. But I was guided in the right direction at every stage. So I didn't have to worry about what next and could focus on my studies. It was the staff from IHM who suggested me to do GCN online while still in Kerala, which I meant didn't have to immediately migrate or do sometime abruptly with my young family. IHM guided me to apply AFRA and also helped me with the forms. And I finally got a decision letter to do a bridging program in Australia. Once my student visa to do my EPIC was sorted, my husband suggested that I do something to upskill my qualification, and I decided to do my GDN from IHM Australia, along with my bridging program. The best thing about this was, after doing EPIC for 12 weeks, I got my Australian nurses registration and was able to work as a part-time nurse while completing GDN. which I could support my family and myself even when I was studying.
Migration is never easy. It's always a struggle story. However, we were lucky we were able to connect with the best institution.
It is our pleasure to have.
Yes, sorry. So that is it. So now we are done with the presentation. So if you have any questions or queries, please send it out to us and we will answer. We will try to answer all of them. So, okay, Ronak, do you want to take over so that I can scan through our Facebook comments?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Bodhi, for that. So we have a lot of questions from the attendants for this seminar, for the webinar. And one of the attendants, Charles Matthew, he's having a question about registration for his wife. And she is right now in India, but she's having gap for more than 5 years. And I would like to ask one of our panelists to answer the question, because the Charles Matthew is in Australia and he is currently on student visa. So you want to know the registration process if there is more than 6 years of gap. If one of the panelists can answer the question, it will be great.
Gions, why don't you grab that one?
Yeah, thanks, Simon and Ronak. So I understand that his wife is having 5 years of gap. So according to the APRA's requirements, APRA need minimum 450 hours in last 5 years if they are planning to be a registered nurse in Australia. And studying a postgraduate qualification will help them to meet the recency of practice. So both graduate certificate in nursing and graduate diploma in nursing is considered a postgraduate qualification because it's an AQF level 8 qualification in Australia. So studying GCN or GDN will help them to meet the recency of practice if they are currently in Australia. Or the second option will be to go back to their home country and work for 3 months and meet the recency of practice. But in New Zealand, it's different. New Zealand need 2,500 hours. That is almost 2 years experience in last 5 years. This option is not in New Zealand. So the recency of practice option after studying graduate certificate in nursing is available only in Australia so far, but we haven't noticed this in New Zealand Nursing Council website. Hope that answer helped. Charles?
Thanks a lot, Gions. Thanks for this valuable information. We do have one of the questions from Jonet. She is having master's degree from Philippines. She is currently working as a renal nurse in, I guess, in surgery. And she wants to know whether she has to go for GDN course for New Zealand registration.
Okay. So, John, if I understand your question properly, you currently have a master's qualification, and you're asking if you still need to go for GDN to apply for registration in New Zealand. So the short answer is no. So as a master's holder, you're eligible to apply for registration directly in New Zealand or Australia. Okay, and I think that's a very important point. The graduate diploma, graduate certificate, graduate diploma is of greatest value for GNM or 3-year diploma holders in order to meet the eligibility requirements. If you hold a master's, you are eligible for registration. If you hold a bachelor, you are eligible for registration. Okay. The reason, if you hold a bachelor, the reason you would do a graduate diploma or a master's is obviously to, as Dr. Lena talked about earlier, to improve your academics qualification, as well as to improve your job opportunities, because as we see, the greatest demand is in that specialized area for specialist nurses as well. So the short answer, John, it is no. With a master's degree, there is no value in doing the graduate diploma. You already hold that qualification anyway.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Thanks for this information. We do have one of the questions from Malaysia as well. The name of the attendee is Entry. She is having Diploma of Nursing and Advanced Diploma of Nursing in Cardiac Technology. She's currently has been working for 10 years. She wants to know if she is going for GDN or GCN course, can she get work or employment in the same field, in the same cardiac technology, as a cardiac technologist?
Okay. So Andrea, that's an interesting situation. I think it's probably what I referred to a little bit earlier as well. So there's a bit of a difference in Australia and New Zealand between the skills you are taught and you work in and the qualification that you hold as well. So if you hold an advanced diploma as a cardiac technologist, that may be recognised by AHPRA, but you would need to have them provide you with an assessment, I guess, of whether they recognise that, at what level they recognise that qualification. Okay. Generally, as a specialist, you would be looking at a graduate certificate, graduate diploma, in order to meet the academic requirements in a specialization, be that, cardiology. And Lena, if you can
Yes,
provide a little bit
she
more.
will need to do a graduate cert grad dip in cardiovascular nursing, because in cardiac technology, I think mostly they are being, nurses are mainly taking EKGs, etc., while undertaking the course will give them much more knowledge and skills in many other areas of pathophysiological states of the heart and the vascular system.
Okay.
So they would need to have an Australian cardiovascular nursing certificate and grad dip.
Yeah. So that's, I hope that answers that question. Now, does IHM offer that at the moment? No, we don't, unfortunately. So
no, we don't, but we are preparing such programs.
Right.
So we will soon be offering them.
Correct.
But other universities do offer them.
Correct. So that's, Andrea, hopefully that helps with your answer. I think what you're asking is, will your advanced diploma be recognized as part of your application for registration? It would possibly be partially recognized, but it's not going to be recognized for you to work as a specialist or to be registered as a specialist, for example. Thanks, Ronak.
Thanks, Simon. Simon, we do have a question from Jonet. She's like, I've done masters from Philippines. So continuing with her query, she's like, can I directly get my registration in New Zealand without doing the GDN course?
Yeah, she can apply. She
can
can
certainly
apply to
apply.
the New Zealand board.
Correct. Yeah.
As she's from Philippines, she has to do competency assessment program, a bridging program, but definitely her master's qualification will be recognized.
An asset.
As an asset, yeah. So New Zealand need minimum bachelor qualification, that is NEZQ of level 7 qualification. So she is already having equivalent NEZQ of level 9, that is a master's qualification.
Correct.
So, but still she has to do bridging program, and after that, you will be getting registration in New Zealand, Janet.
Yeah.
Good. We do have a question from one of the attendants. I like John's to highlight because it's regarding the registration in New Zealand. So Jose wants to know, because he has been trying to get registration in New Zealand, and he's saying it's very hard. He's having 3 years of diploma from India. So he wants to know whether it's easy or it's hard to get registration in New Zealand from council.
To be frank, Jose, the decision depends upon the nursing council in New Zealand, and the time is completely upon them, because they have huge number of applications pending. That's why it may be getting some time. But definitely with your diploma qualification, you have to upgrade your qualification either to a bachelor level, or you can study graduate certificate in nursing with us. That is AQ of level 8, which will be equivalent to NEZQ of level 8 in New Zealand. And after that, you have to still do competency assessment program, as I believe you are in India right now. So still you have to do bridging program in New Zealand. But in case if you are working as a registered nurse in Singapore, you will be getting direct registration in New Zealand, as Simon discussed earlier. Hope you have noticed that point in our webinar session. Yeah, hope that helps.
Thanks a lot, Johns. Lastly, I just wanted to ask, there's one question from Murugan, he's from India. So he wants to know whether nurses from India can go for GDN or GCN course in order to get registration in New Zealand or Australia.
Okay. So if I understand the question correctly, it is, are you able to study GDN whilst you remain in India, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, absolutely. So the program is available online as well as on campus. And obviously on campus at the moment is very difficult. And we don't expect with borders closed in Australia, very difficult to get travel, etc., due to COVID. So the online program, we have many, many students studying the online program around the world, including in India. It's exactly the same qualification and course. So let me just repeat that again. It's exactly the same course. So when you get your certificate of completion, your attestation, it doesn't say graduate diploma of nursing brackets online. It simply says graduate diploma of nursing. Australia does not distinguish between online and on campus. There's no difference in the course. Dr. Lena's fantastic team, they teach online 1 minute and on campus the next minute. Same people, and she's shaking her head because they work so hard to do so. But that is, and that's a really important point, because I know when you go and register in Dubai, for example, if you have studied online, they will send you away because they don't regard online very highly, okay? So can you study in India? Absolutely, you can study in India, okay? 6 months for GCN, 12 months for graduate diploma.
Thanks a lot, Simon.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, I wanted to address a question from Francisco. So she is right now working as a neonatal nurse in Singapore for 5 years. She's having her bachelor's from Philippines. She just want to know the pathway to get the registration in New Zealand.
In New Zealand. So if you are a registered nurse in Singapore, and if you have a bachelor degree qualification, you already have an option to get direct registration in New Zealand. You don't have to do competency assessment program, that is a bridging program in New Zealand, because registered nurses in Singapore have that option to get direct registration in New Zealand. But definitely the decision lies with Nursing Council New Zealand, but that option is there for you.
So we have, thank you, Jian. So we have a few questions from our Facebook Live. Okay, so this student, Raman, wants to know if she will get her direct registration after GCN or GDN, just to bring that out.
Look, I think it's really important, and Gion's hit on this point a moment ago.
Yes.
At the final decision for registration sits with the Nursing Registration Council in New Zealand or the Health Practitioner Registration Authority in Australia. Okay, so and let me explain two things to you. First of all, is if you do, for example, a bachelor qualification, or if you do a bachelor qualification, there are lots of different schools that address a bachelor in lots of different ways, okay? And what the Nursing Council is looking at is how does that bachelor or that qualification you have done measure or map against the Australian bachelor qualification? So have you learnt the same things? Have you done as many clinical placement hours? Have you done as many rotations, for example, in this course you've studied? And the nursing registration boards in New Zealand and Australia have a list of all of the universities from around the world. And they have looked at all these courses, and they can then simply say, well, yes, this course is equivalent to Australia or New Zealand. The next course is not equivalent. So then you must do CAP, or you must go and do, so if you're looking at New Zealand, you must go and do CAP, for example, okay? That's how they're assessing whether or not you need to do CAP in the case of New Zealand. In Australia, they're looking at, again, your qualification. Is it similar to Australia? Yes or no? And if it is similar to Australia, then you're being asked to do the NCLEX test and then OBA, the OBA test for 1 day. Okay. So at the end of the day, it's the discretion, it's the decision of the Nursing Registration Board. We talk to the boards every week. We know what we see the trends. We know students are studying graduate diploma and graduate certificate, applying to the nursing APRA in Australia, and are then being given decision letters because they now meet the education levels. But we also know some other students who have not done GCN, for example, or GDN, have applied and they don't get decision letters because their qualification, the university they went to or the course they did is not equivalent to Australian standards. Okay, so that's really the decision. There's a lot of information on the APRA website, and there's a lot of information on the Nursing Council of New Zealand website. There's also a lot of information on the IHM website about the registration process and the steps that the nursing councils go through. Okay, so we can't guarantee registration. What we can do is prepare you to meet the standards and then hand you to the nursing board for them to finally agree with us and tick the box.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you so much for that. So we have
someone is asking about the duration of the GCN course, and it's 6 months. Grad dip is 12 months. And of course, it's the academic year. So when we say 6 months, it's around 3.5 months of study and assessments in the 6 months.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lena. So we have another attendee. His name is Samuel. So he's currently working in Singapore. So he wants to know if he can study part-time in Australia and work full-time.
He cannot work in Australia without getting the nursing registration in Australia. Once he gets the nursing registration, if he applies for the OBA, it's a multiple choice exam. It goes gradually in difficulty, a case study with many questions, and each question answered, then a higher level question comes about. It's a computerized test, and we are preparing programs to train people in undertaking these tests. So it's important for those people who are not sure of their knowledge and skills, or if they think that they need preparations to help them pass the test. We cannot secure that they will pass the test. We can help them pass the test by educating them in NCLEX and in OSCE. And we are running part 1 OBA in NCLEX. Once they pass that, they can take part 2 in simulation assessments. And these 2 short units, I wouldn't say short, they're 12-week duration. They will help students to review their nursing knowledge, get a lot of experience in answering multiple choice exam, going up in difficulty. So if that person can come here, get the registration, then they can take the courses as part-time students, but they need to be registered to be able to work here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lena. So another one of our students wants to know if EPIQ will be considered as recency of practice. Baha.
An interesting question.
Yes.
Yes.
I think, Gions, do you want to take it over? I'm not sure.
Okay, so EPIQ, according to the rules mentioned in NMB's website or APRA website, they have mentioned that an NMB approved program will be helping them to meet recency of practice. However, to get the decision letter to do bridging program, they need recency of practice. So if you are not having the recency of practice right now, you won't be getting a decision letter either to do a bridging program or an OBA. So hope that helps. So if you don't have recency of practice, and if you're planning to apply to Australia, we advise you to do graduate diploma in nursing so that you can update your recency of practice and then apply to nursing board in Australia.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, James.
Yes, John. John, there's a query from one of the attendees. Can you please highlight if the next upcoming intakes for the GDN and GCN courses?
Yeah, definitely. So we have next intake starting from November. So we have that option both on campus and online. As the borders are closed, definitely you can study the course online. And our entry requirements, we'll go through that. So graduate certificate and graduate diploma in nursing, our entry criteria is to be a registered nurse. So if you are a diploma holder, we need minimum 1 year of experience as a registered nurse in your home country. And if you are a bachelor degree holder, we are not asking for experience, but we prefer to have minimum 3 months. And we need IELTS score of 6.5 overall and no band less than 6. And the course fees for graduate certificate in nursing is 10,000 Australian dollars and graduate diploma is 12,000 Australian dollars if you're studying the course online. And we are giving scholarship options for students if you are studying this course from this course online. So you can get those information from our admission consultants when you are contacting them if you are interested to join the course. Yeah. And we have, after that, the next intake will be in March 2021. So next November and March 2021 will be our next intake, Ronak.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we have another question, interesting question from one of our students, current students. So she has completed GCN from IHM and also completed EPIQ. So she's currently studying EPIQ. So she wants to know whether she should go for GDN or Masters. So I think she is not aware about a Masters pathway. So Gions, if you could please highlight that.
Okay, so I believe that student, if you can tell as a
her name is Bhavna.
I believe, Bhavana, you are a GNM nurse and you studied graduate certificate in nursing with us, and you secure a decision letter from APRA to do bridging program. So first of all, congratulations for receiving decision letter from APRA. And the second one is a graduate diploma in nursing and leading to masters. So after completing EPIQRN program in Australia, yes, you are a registered nurse once APRA recognized your qualification. So after becoming a registered nurse, as Dr. Lena and Simon mentioned before, you will be getting a salary hike, almost like 4% extra salary compared to other nurses. So you can definitely study graduate diploma in nursing. So recently, IHM has signed a memorandum of understanding between UCAM University in Spain. So if you study 2 more units, and UCAM University will be giving you credit transfer from graduate diploma in nursing you studied with IHM towards their master in advanced nursing, which is equal to EQF level 7, that is European qualification level 7. So definitely you have an option to upgrade your qualification to a master's level, that to an European qualification. Yeah, hope that helps you.
Okay, so she wants to know, she has again commented, so Bhavna, she wants to know, so she has already completed those 2 courses, GCN and EPIQ. So how long will it take for her to complete her master's with us, the UCAM masters?
If she completes another 4 units, she can apply for an advanced standing with UCAM and get an advanced Masters of Nursing. So 4 more units.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lena. So Bhavna, yes, 4 more units, and then you can get your master's degree.
From UCAM University in Spain. Yeah.
Yes.
4 more units to complete the graduate diploma.
Yeah.
And you apply to credit transfer. And 2 more units to complete master's.
She has her EPQRN.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So 4 more units.
Yes, just 4 more units. That's right. Yeah.
Just 4 more, and she applies to UCAM, and they'll give her the advanced standing and the recognition of prior learning.
Yes.
Dr. Lena, it will be good if you can elaborate in that option, because we may be having some students who complete.
Yeah, okay, I will quickly do that because I have to go. Okay, now we have, through our international affairs officer, have worked out where we sent our program to a university, UCAM University in Spain. They have looked at our postgraduate program in the GCN units and the GDN units, and they have also looked at our 2 units which we give in the bridging program, the EPIQRN, which is a bridging program for nurses to get their licensure and registration in Australia. Now, UCAM University has approved our program, and if the IHM students who undertake a graduate diploma plus the 2 units from the EPIQRN, which are, they can apply to the university in Spain, and the university in Spain, I think it will require another bit of a fee, and they will provide them with an advanced Masters of Nursing from UCAM University. And I want to tell also the students that we are having here that if they complete our GDN program, we have also applied for TEQSA to accept our master's program, and we are looking forward for the response. And they can undertake our master's program by undertaking another year of study here, and they can get a master's from IHM, as well as our students who complete the GDN can apply to Charles Darwin University, and they will accept their GDN from IHM, and they will undertake another year of study and can get a master's from Charles Darwin University. Also, I might add and say that we have many students who have completed our GDN program and have applied in University of Technology or in Sydney or University of Western Sydney. And again, they have been given credit to their graduate diploma and were put into another year of study to obtain their Master of Nursing. In Australia, our Master of Nursing is longer than the European countries. It's a 2-year program, and it's very similar to many American universities as well. You can get a master's in 1 year in the States, you can get a master's in 2 years. And definitely, when you go applying for jobs, and especially in careers in education in nursing, if people want to become educators in nursing, they usually look more favorably for a 2-year master program. But that doesn't mean that we rule out the 1 year and 2 units master program from UCAM. It depends on the person, their experience, and the way they present in the interview that will assist them as well in obtaining careers in nursing. So nursing has a lot of career opportunities, not only in a hospital or in a nursing home or in a clinical center. There are industrial companies that hire nurses. Many non-industrial companies hire nurses, and then there is nurse researchers, and then there is the education field where they become clinical educators or theoretical educators, and they can go into university levels until they receive their professoriate. So these are options in nursing, and I hope they have been made clear to all of you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much,
More
Dr.
than
Lina.
happy to answer questions through our site, through our website, through contacting us. We are always ready to answer any questions that you may have, that you may go away and say, oh, I wish I asked them this question. We are open for any time you need a question answered, put in writing through our website, contact us through our 1-800 number, and we shall be there to answer you.
Yes, thank you. So I believe we can answer the last question for the day. So I think Charles is a little confused with regards to his recency of practice.
Okay.
So if Gions, if you could please take that.
See that question. So in my case, with bachelor's qualification and 5-year experience, but no current experience in the last 5 years.
Yes.
Okay. So if you don't have an experience for last 5 years, and if you're planning to apply to New Zealand, that won't work out. So you have an option to apply in Australia, and you can study graduate certificate or graduate diploma in nursing with us to meet the recency of practice, but definitely not in New Zealand. They need minimum 2-year experience in last 5 years. Charles,
Yes.
Or they have to have the 450 hours required by our nurses board and APRA. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Then, if anyone has any other questions, they can send it to us via email. So you can email it to us at inquiry@ihm.edu.au or visit our website, as Dr. Lina has mentioned. So yes, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Dr. Lina. Thank you, Gions. Thank you, Ronak. And to all the participants, thank you so much. We will try and have more interactive sessions like this more often in the near future. And again, if you have any questions or queries, we do one-on-one counseling as well. So if you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer them and to help you. Yes.
Right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bodhi. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Have a good one then. Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.